I really don't know if I should be making this video, mostly because the whole point of this video is to explain a game that is more enjoyable when left unexplained. Of course, I haven't even mentioned the name of this game yet. The game I am currently talking about is Outer Wilds, which is often confused with The Outer Worlds. This video is less of an analysis and more of a tour through the game with a little bit of commentary. Interestingly, if you've not played Outer Wilds, this video is not for you. Outer Wilds is something you should play, with no or little knowledge about what you can discover in this game. Discovery is most impactful when you are the one discovering. Games have a tendency to railroad your discovery. You learn factor A, B, and C linearly, making your progression predetermined, and all the said discoveries planned and measured to build off the last. Congrats, you just heard the definition of pacing. I do not mean to imply that linear storytelling is bad. Just when you follow a linear story, everyone will discover everything in the same order, meaning you are along for the ride and learning passively, in a sense. Now, what does this mean for Outer Wilds? In Outer Wilds, you immerse yourself into a solar system filled with unknowns. You play as an alien who has joined the Outer Wilds Venture program, an alien space program in an alien universe. You are the fifth Hearthian, the name of the alien race you play as, to have the privilege of exploring the solar system. The point is, there is actually very little linear progression on this game. You can learn plot points A, B, and C in any order. This is represented by the fact that you can go to any planet in any order, and visit the locations within those planets. You don't need to fulfill an arbitrary requirement in order to access any area. Of course, there are areas that are locked off, but they are blocked off by your lack of knowledge. As soon as you understand where to go, or even at the beginning of the game, you could stumble across a locked off area accidentally. I should clarify now that the main draw of the game is the story, and seeing the next location. You follow the hints of an ancient and absent civilization, following the individual threads which connect to more threads leading to a complete story. You follow these threads in an attempt to stop the time loop. You heard that correctly. Your character is stuck in a time loop that ends every 22 minutes once the sun explodes. This allows the game to have evolving worlds that actually change as time goes by. Also, there are no loading screens during gameplay. The transition from space to planet and planet to space is seamless. If that at all sounds interesting, you should buy the game. It will definitely be worth your while. You can purchase the game on the PS4, on the Xbox One, with Outer Wilds being available on its Game Pass service, and finally, Outer Wilds is available on the Epic Games launcher, with it coming to Steam eventually. Don't ruin the game for yourself by watching the video. It should be here forever. In Outer Wilds, you play as an astronaut, and your astronaut suit has a few gadgets to help you traverse and understand the universe you are thrust into. You can boost, which uses a resource called fuel. You have a signal scope, which allows you to locate signals from throughout the solar system. There are three main types of signals: Outer Wilds Venture, Quantum, and Know My Distress signal. These different signals have different purposes. Every planet has an Outer Wilds Venture signal coming from or near it, allowing you to locate planets without using your map, if you so choose. These signals come from fellow astronauts who act as guides for the planet you are on, and guide you towards points of interest on that planet. The quantum signals are mostly puzzles/lessons required for getting to and traversing the optional quantum moon location. I will go into more detail later. The escape pod signals lead you to other Know My escape pods. It's kinda surprising, and I know. As far as I'm concerned, there is only one good reason for these to exist. But that too exists in a land called Later. Another tool your character has is the Scout Launcher. This tool is mostly used to see an obstacle called ghost matter, which is invisible to the naked eye, and will kill you near instantly when you step in it. You either see the telltale ghost matter crystals, or see the warning at the top of your screen, as an indicator of its nearby location. The Scout also serves as a light source you can shoot. Besides your flashlight, which illuminates areas in front of you, your Scout can be shot down into dark areas, illuminating what was unseen. There is the tool you'll be using the most, your translator. This will be used to translate the Know My text that is found all over the solar system. Since every cycle is on a timer and people read at different speeds, when you read text and you're standing completely still, no movement whatsoever, time stops. This is signified by the edges of your screen going dark. If you don't look in the settings, you might not figure out that time stops when you read translated text, because music still plays. And when the song signifying the sun is about to explode starts, your time-stopping powers will no longer work. By default, only reading the Alien Know My text will stop time, but you can disable this or enable other time-stopping abilities similar to the one automatically enabled in the settings, if you so choose. You have a constantly decreasing meter of oxygen, which slowly goes down as time goes by. You can regain oxygen by stepping inside your ship or entering an area that has living trees nearby. You can also lose oxygen faster if you run out of fuel, because instead of using fuel, you will use oxygen. Using oxygen as a propellant is an extremely efficient way to waste oxygen. Your oxygen will disappear very quickly and doesn't provide as powerful a boost as fuel. While using oxygen as a fuel, you will be unable to super boost. In order to prevent wasting oxygen, you can either select the refuel option when looking at a fuel canister, take off your spacesuit, then put it on again, or by selecting the refuel and heal option when looking at the cabinet in your ship. Heal option, well, you can actually take damage. Your suit can be punctured, or you can take fall damage. You can tell how much health you have left by looking at the guy in the top left of your screen. You don't want the body to be fully red, or else you die. These are the resources you have to manage in order to survive on foot when exploring the planet. Except, most of the dangers you come across are environment based. So, keep your wits about you, and be wary of the unknown. Traversing on foot is one half of transportation in this space game. There's also your spaceship and how gravity works in this game. Flying the spaceship is simple. You hold LT to use your downwards boost and RT to upwards boost. The upwards boost, when landed, will allow you to be propelled upwards into the reaches of space. You can use a joystick to initiate either forward, backward, left, or right, or any mixture of two directions beside each other, like southeast would be backwards, left. It's impossible to do a left-right mixture because you can't do that. It's physically impossible. There are 4 speeds to your boost, and you get a more powerful boost depending on how far you push the joystick. If you push in a southeast type direction, you can only go a max of 3 speed. You can use one LT boost or RT boost while using the joystick boosts. If you push LT and RT at the same time, nothing happens. When you're flying in space, your momentum will not decrease, naturally meaning you have to use your boosters in order to slow down. If you crash into a solid surface at a high speed, you will die, or just damage your ship. And you can repair damages, luckily. Planets have gravity in this game, which may surprise all of you so much that you will stop, look out the window, and really reflect on how lucky you are to not have gravity affect your life in any way whatsoever. We really are the chosen ones. When flying by a planet, your ship will be pulled towards it. This is especially noticeable when flying near the sun. That thing sucks you towards it harder than a black hole, and from a farther distance. I noticed when I attempted to fly towards one of the outer planets, Dark Bramble, my speed would slow down slightly without me doing anything. While getting footage of the skybox, I suddenly died by going into the sun. This was unexpected, since I tried to get the ship into a state of no movement before actually doing anything. This leads me to believe that the sun pulls everything in the solar system towards it very lightly, meaning the sun has at least 2 gravitational fields. This outer gravitational field may play a role in keeping all the planets and other things in orbit. Maybe. Once you get out of the solar system, indicated by the sun disappearing from sight, you will no longer experience the gravitational pull of the sun. The sun is not the only thing with gravity. Planets have it too. You will automatically become level with the planet you are flying over, probably depending on how fast you go and how close you are to the planet. I figured this out by trying to escape Timberhearth's orbit upside down. The game wouldn't let me. Your ship has tools associated with it. The signal scope, scout launcher, your spacesuit, which can naturally be found inside the ship, the ship log, the refuel station, and autopilot. I have already explained what most of these do in the previous section. I have not explained the ship's log or autopilot. Autopilot may seem self-explanatory, but I have a few words to say about this bad Sal, so let's not until later. Not much later though. The ship's log is a conspiracy theory map where you get information and then link it to other clues that you have found. Eventually, everything will connect to each other, leading to a complete story. It will also tell you if there's information you are missing in areas, meaning you have to explore a bit. Sometimes it doesn't tell you when you're missing info, such as with the Black Hole Forge in Brittle Hollow. It didn't tell me there was more to discover when I hadn't yet been inside. Maybe this is because certain pieces of the lore are given status of important, and others are not. Or maybe it's just a glitch. Who knows? Probably the developers. You can also push Y and transfer the ship log to a more static world map. If the locations are grayed out, then you haven't discovered any lore there, and if it is in full color, you have lore discovered there, and you can read about it in the planets menu. You can also track planets here.
Now, let's get to the autopilot. When locked onto a planet, push up on the D-pad and you'll fly near the planet without any effort on your part. You will have to fly into the planet manually, but I'm sure you can manage that, right? There's also an autopilot light where you just hold down A and your velocity will match that of the planet. Although it doesn't account for the circular orbit of these planets, I don't think it's possible for it to. If you are a free flyer, then this is your best friend. Although, it only does go a maximum of 3 speed. Can you believe it? I don't actually know how much faster 4 speed is than 3, but it says it's faster, so I will believe it. Therefore, it is more efficient for you to do all your ship maneuvering manually.
Exploration is this game's bread and butter. You are pushed to journey all around the solar system in pursuit of answers. These answers can be purely story-based, telling you more about how the Nomai operated. Or, these answers can be world informative, telling you about how to get into a new area that could not be accessed by normal means. In this game, the reward for playing is not material, as funny as it is to say about a video game. It isn't a new spaceship that flies faster than the previous one, it's knowledge, and the experience you get from exploring this solar system. The only example of things carrying over from different loops are the ship's logs and frequencies, but that's born of convenience, and is an example of something that shouldn't work in a game's universe but is done to make the user experience better. So, if you forget where to go, you can look at the ship's log and figure out where you need to go and what you need to discover. Outer Wilds reminds me of a game I have never played, Subnautica. I've heard many people compare this game to Subnautica because, like Outer Wilds, Subnautica is an unintentional horror game that plays off the fear of the unknown. You have no idea whether or not the glowing lights in the fog can harm you. You don't know if falling into the black hole will kill you instantly or transport you to another location. I don't get scared by games often, being the manly man that I am. However, this game, unlike others, has actually scared me. Not everyone will be scared by this game, as my experience is not indicative of others, but I have heard other people call this game scary, and I have heard the devs say they didn't mean to make a scary game. The fact that they even pointed this out proves that there is some aspect of horror to this video game. This is where I talk about the planets of Outer Wilds. I can divide the planets into 3 unique categories: static, semi-active, and active. Static planets do not change as the cycle progresses. They rotate and change location around the sun, but other than that, there are no changes. Semi-static planets change in small, mostly temporary ways, and active planets change a lot as the cycle progresses. Planets that fall into the category of static are Alderac, Dark Bramble, and the Quantum Moon. Semi-static planets are the Interloper, Timberhearth, and Giant Steep. Finally, the active planets are Brittle Hollow with its White Hole Station counterpart, and the Hourglass Twins. I will begin by talking about the static planets.
Although I just said Timberhearth belongs in the semi-active category, I'm going to start off with it here and then move to the static category. This is because I don't want to separate Timberhearth and Alderac. I hope you'll understand why soon. Visually, Timberhearth is not so different from our planet. It's safe. You know what the planet is. It's familiar to you with tall trees, green grass, mountains and geysers. When you journey inside Timberhearth's craters, there are rocky walls and a good grass texture. But if you so choose to explore the boring empty space between craters, you will see that the texture that covers a vast majority of this planet's surface looks like it's from the PS2 era. You can see that this planet is not round, but fake video game round with visible edges. I only noticed this on Timberhearth. Visually, Timberhearth is the weakest link, and not because of its similarity to our Earth, but because of its areas that needed a little bit more time in the oven. Timberhearth is an intentionally bland planet. The starting area where you begin serves as the tutorial for the game. Here, you learn the controls of flying your ship and using your spacesuit, and how to use your tools while learning what they do. Once you complete your starting the game tour, you're free to explore the solar system, or Timberhearth more if you so choose. There are 4 other areas on this planet, and all of them serve as introductions to other areas or plot points. Let's start with the crater, where you find a crash site with an NPC investigating it. This crash site is the newfound home of a dark bramble seed, which you can investigate by shooting your drone into it, showing the extra-dimensional qualities of the dark bramble for likely your first time. If you whip out the signal scope, you can hear a harmonica, just a few meters away. This harmonica is supposedly a long-lost astronaut's, Feldspar. The introduction to dark bramble is definitely intriguing.
In another crater, you can find Timberhearth's true quantum stone. These quantum stones are all supposed to teach you something, but I spent a decent amount of time here and couldn't discover what it wanted to teach me. In this crater, one other thing can be found, a sign which contains a poem. This poem randomizes the order in which the individual lines of poetry are placed. This is a Hearthian astronaut's, Gabbro's, first and only attempt at quantum art. In this quantum grove, there's also a pathway which leads to another crater. This crater houses an outpost where you can read some text from a notebook. However, the first time I got here and read the note, I died for no reason. I thought, oh no, I've discovered someone's secret and they killed me over it. But I went back later and didn't die. I do not know why I perished.
Now, we go to the most interesting original area on Timberhearth, an old Nomai mine. This area is marked by the biggest mountain on Timberhearth. Outside the main pathway to this area, there is a Nomai ruin which marks this area as a teleporter exit point. But at this point in the game, you probably don't know this. When you enter the crater, you see a broken bridge that goes to the mountain, and the area underneath the bridge. The area underneath the bridge has nothing interesting except some Nomai murals which don't update your ship log, and some ghost matter. The bridge is slightly destroyed and you need to super boost to completely cross it. There's also a waterfall that you have to walk through in order to completely enter the center of the mountain, where all around you, you'll find that there are jets of water rising and falling. If you jump underneath the platform, then you'll find that the water prevents fall damage. Here, there is a lore tablet. It talks about how the Nomai were mining in this area, but stopped because they didn't want to hamper the Hearthians' ability to create. And because they got all the metal they needed. There is a note here about how the Nomai wonder what the Hearthians' fourth eye does, even though the third and fourth eye are the same as human eyes, presumably. Along with other clues, we can take this to mean that the Nomai's third eye is special somehow. In the same area, there is a water flow that takes you all around Timberhearth, sometimes spraying you up by geysers, allowing you to see where you currently are. This is the semi-active part of the planet. This is quite cool, as it expanded my perception of Timberhearth, flowing from water chamber to water chamber. However, the geysers can definitely cause problems. If you get caught in a geyser in one of the narrow pathways, you will definitely get caught in the rest, which will just show you the same crater, most likely from a different angle. There are also issues with you not being able to get back into the hole easily, because when you get shot out of the water path by geysers, you get blasted out quite a distance away, and then you have to rush back to the hole, and then you proceed to get shot back out again. I could wait, and I did, but I think it's kinda dumb that I have to. If you continue the water trail to its ending, you will end up back restarted, underneath the platform. As long as you have the fuel and the will to wait for a geyser without rage quitting, you can get back up to the platform without dying. From where you enter this area, there is a door across from you. This begins the witness puzzles. In order to open this door, you need to look at the blue ball at the top left of the door and look towards the other side of the blue ball's passage. This opens the door, and these witness puzzles don't really get any more in depth. Sometimes the doors have the outside ball broken, meaning you have to find an alternate entrance. However, these doors are not on Earth. Hearth! Yeah, that's what I meant. Anyways, once you open the door, it leads down into the core of the world. What you'll find there is an old Nomai mine. With translated text, it says that they were mining ore to completely insulate the core of Ash Twin. The cool little detail is that the holes of the wall are actually kind of shaped like the Hourglass Twins.
The outer rock is a moon. To be specific, the Earth's moon. It is exactly what everyone thinks of when you think of moon. Craters? Check. Low gravity? Check. Flag with an insignia on it? Check. Gray color? Actually, no. Wait, that's not what the script says. It says check. Ladies and gentlemen, no matter how you look at it, it's the moon. I don't think it's a coincidence that Timberhearth and the Outer Rock look similar to the Earth and our moon. It probably serves as a safe, familiar place to venture to on your first journey into space, and to push you away from them because of their similarity to their real-world counterparts. You probably want to go somewhere else and explore new environments, not stuff you've seen in pictures. Another way this area is meant as a beginning area is because it introduces you to the Nomai story by telling you their goal, finding the Eye of the Universe. You find this information on the North Pole of the Outer Rock, which also has a version 1.0 planet and eye tracker device. It always knows where all the planets are, but only one at a time, and if you selected that one. The tracker will endlessly search for the eye if you selected it. You can wait till the end of the loop, and you won't get any results. I don't think the Nomai were actively learning about the Quantum Moon at the time of this device's construction, and that's why it's not available as an option to track. An old Hearthian, Esker, has built a home in the Outer Rock, but they are ignored by everyone despite being the closest to Earth. So, when you talk to him, he is desperate for social contact. Unlike other characters who play their instruments, he whistles. There's another more impactful difference. There's no option to tell him what you've discovered. Cool. I believe the moon is to act as your first real location because of its size. It should really only take less than one cycle to fully explore. Somewhere on the moon, there is a giant crater, one that is filled with ice shards, similar to the ones surrounding the dark bramble branches. In this crater, there is a recording from Chur, where they wonder if a giant piece struck the Outer Rock untold millennia ago, and if other pieces struck other planets. Onto the mysterious, signal-emitting moon that travels the solar system in a blink of the eye. Visiting the Quantum Moon and completing its puzzles result in a slightly different true ending, because of what you find here. More later. The Quantum Moon is very cool visually. It copies the look of all the major celestial bodies in our solar system, except the Sun. When the Quantum Moon changes its location, its appearance and layout also change, making the puzzle of figuring out how to get to the North Pole an actual puzzle. When you find the Quantum Moon and finally land on its surface, by taking a picture of it with your scout, you will always land on the South Pole. However, the process of landing and mastering the Quantum Moon requires you to visit the other stones, except the Grove Stone. Anyways, in order to land on the Quantum Moon, you need to have gone to the Tower Stone in order to learn that observing a quantum object and looking at an image of one are exactly the same thing. But me being the dumb idiot that I am, kept taking pictures of the moon thinking if I had looked at one picture, the moon would disappear for me. However, I think the probe landing on the Quantum Moon while I look at it should work. In order to know how to navigate the Quantum Moon properly, you need to discover the secret of the cave stone on Ember Twin. The lesson here is that if you can't see anything and are in contact with the quantum object, you become quantum. Therefore, when you are capable of seeing things, you will be in a different location. When you are touching a quantum object. When the Quantum Moon is orbiting a planet, its surface becomes a representation of the planet it's orbiting. The goal is to get to the North Pole, but you start at the South Pole. Some of the reflections have obstacles preventing you from getting there. In order to change your reflection, you will need to find the tower everywhere that you can find it, and get inside. These are how you traverse from reflection to reflection. This is because you can no longer see, and therefore are teleported to a new reflection. Once you make your way to the North Pole and get to its reflection of the Eye of the Universe, which looks like quantum stones, and traverse the path back to the South Pole, you will get your reward. A living Nomai. You can even talk to it. Kinda. The sucky part about this is that the Nomai doesn't know your language. But you know it's via translation, so it's mostly a one-way conversation. The way it's done is quite clever, with you putting in nouns and verbs into pedestals and her answering in written text. This makes sense. Why would a 200,000-year-old Nomai who's been stuck on the Quantum Moon know the Hearthian language? I went to Solanum, the Nomai's name, without my suit, and she didn't recognize my face like some of her predecessors would have. That would have been very cool if she did. The only interesting thing Solanum has to say is about the Eye of the Universe. The Dark Bramble is an evil place. The sea that orbits the solar system oozes malevolence, with the black wood that reaches out supporting shards of a broken ice shell that protect the seed. If you enter, it gets worse. There is a constant fog shrouding your vision, with white lights piercing through the mist. There are more black brambles that twist and turn everywhere, most coming out of a sea that leads deeper into the bramble, in a very unnatural way. If you find the Nomai's wreckage, you'll find the bramble has taken hold of a ship and is twisted around it, ensuring it will not escape through normal methods. This place definitely succeeds at creating an atmosphere. Without a doubt, the Dark Bramble is the most interesting planet in Outer Wilds. It is one giant puzzle. Normally, gimmick locations in games are entirely missed with a cool introduction and mechanic, however, no actual depth or reason to go there. Dark Bramble avoids this by actually having content in it.
Before I get ahead of myself, let's describe the Dark Bramble's content. Dark Bramble is an area where the inside is bigger than the outside. Once you get inside the main Dark Bramble seed, you're greeted with fog and lights glowing from the depths of said fog, with one singular red light distinguishing itself from the rest. Most of those white lights are anglerfish who will eat you if you get too close and make a noise. They are terrifying in your first few voyages into the bramble. The other white lights are more science-defying Dark Bramble seeds, which, should you enter, will lead you deeper into the bramble. When you make it to the seed without knowing the secret to avoiding the anglerfish, you'll find one thing waiting for you: death. Let's get back to this area later. Now, how do you discover which lights are anglerfish and which are seeds? You use your handy-dandy signal scope. I don't think this is hard to find out because since the beginning of the game, the Dark Bramble has been associated with the signal scope. Since on the moon, Esker notices Feldspar's harmonica coming from Timberhearth. If you choose to pursue the signal, you'll find the bramble seed. Plus, in areas like this in games, you tend to use an outside tool to help you traverse them. The only flaw with this is that this knowledge comes from experience with games in general. So, when you enter the Dark Bramble with your signal scope on the Outer Wilds Venture signal and look around, you'll see that one of the lights has Feldspar's song coming from it. If you do this without knowing the anglerfish can only hear you, then getting to the seed can be a very tense experience. Once you get inside the seed, there are 3 glowing lights that are also giving you Feldspar's signal. You need to find one that's big enough to fit through, which can be a bit of trial and error. Once you find that one, you're greeted by a lone, singular light, with Feldspar's harmonica coming straight from it. I don't know about you, but I thought Feldspar was eaten by a fish, and this was one final trap. I didn't know what was playing his harmonica, but it was evil, that's for sure. There was nothing evil there. Instead, it is the corpse of one giant anglerfish with a seed inside its chest, and Feldspar just chilling there with a bunch of trees in the fish's jaw. The size of this fish is awesome. Landing the fish is definitely not intended, so you have to land outside it and walk towards Feldspar. They talk about how they ended up here and say the "you're not bad kid" line for landing here yourself. In a dialogue path, they will say the anglerfish likely ate a seed and was slowly consumed, killed, both, by the seed's growth.
This proves in my mind that the Dark Bramble wants nothing more than to consume and assimilate everything, although I don't think it's conscious. Back to your regularly scheduled programming. Anyways, you meet Feldspar, the most legendary pilot in the Outer Wilds Venture history. They tell you how they ended up here, and how to find out how to get past the electricity barrier that's beyond the current on Giant's Deep. You figure this out by journeying beyond the anglerfish's tail and following the flashing lights which turn out to be Feldspar's ship. Their crash caused a hole in the Dark Bramble branch, proving them to be hollow for some reason. At a certain point in your journey through the branch, you'll have to ditch your ship and go on foot. If you follow it, you'll find yourself in a narrow icy passageway with a jellyfish thought to be found exclusively on Giant's Deep, lying dead. You can find a note from Feldspar which tells you to go inside the jellyfish, and if you do, you discover one final note that says the jellyfish tastes horrible. And they are excellent insulators, gifting you the knowledge you need in order to get to the true core of Giant's Deep. To backtrack a bit, I'm pretty sure I saw Feldspar's ship and a hollow branch in another part of the bramble. I didn't go through it at the time, and I can't find it again. Now, if the bramble ended there, it would be a gimmicky place with a bit of intrigue about how and why the bramble is, but ultimately a letdown. But with the Nomai storyline, it's a gimmick with a ton of intrigue. A Nomai vessel, which is essentially a mothership, was trapped inside the bramble by accident after this Nomai tribe was following a signal from the eye of the universe. 3 escape pods were launched. 2 escaped this nightmare realm. An escape pod and the vessel lie deep within the bramble. As you explore other planets, you'll find 2 Nomai escape pods, which have an escape pod frequency. This is how you find the 3rd pod. In the Dark Bramble, you get your signal scope out and follow the Nomai escape pod frequency to another seed. Gameplay-wise, this is the same, so far, as finding Feldspar. Anyways, you find the Nomai escape pod and discover they tried to find their way back to their vessel. They got 2 signals coming from 2 seeds, each of them producing an identical signal, which was the vessel signal. They could only survive the trip to one of the seeds. That seed ended up being too small for any to fit through, so the Nomai died of asphyxiation. If you shoot your scout through the seed, it gives you the location of the other seed, which you can make it to easily. Except the seed you need to enter is the red seed. I've already spoiled the solution to this puzzle, but this is the major planetary roadblock of the Dark Bramble. This means you have to go explore a new planet in order to get the answer, or watch a YouTube video, you experience ruining casual. Once you discover the answer, you go into the red seed and drift through the red tinted bramble, probably getting a closer look at the anglerfish than you have until this point. I have 2 complaints. On your first journey through this area, you do not know when it's safe to actually start going towards scout signal because the anglerfish are everywhere. Something that ties into this first point is that moving your camera around and rotating the ship doesn't actually make any noise, which allows you to look at the anglerfish and help you decide when it's best to start moving, without them hearing you. My second complaint is that on your next attempts, you may try and go into the seed at a higher speed, but the game slows you down when you enter.
All seeds, including the main Dark Bramble planet, do this, but this specific one hurts the most, because while this moment is cool and tense your first time here, after that and during that you're waiting, doing nothing, until you get to the eggs, the correct place to boost towards the scout signal. However, if you let us go max speed, you'll have to slow down before you run into the eggs and potentially die, and slowing down activates your thrusters, which alerts the anglerfish. You could use the emergency escape to change direction and completely disable your ship, but that isn't a main feature, because it's hard to find and using it is worth an achievement. Not even getting the main ending is worth an achievement in this game. The reward to this area, though, is definitely worth it. The vessel. Unfortunately, you can't explore most of it. In the middle of the only room you can explore inside the vessel, there is an empty power source. And in other places inside this room, you can learn a little bit more about the currently live Nomai throughout the universe, because the ship has continued to hear Nomai signals. Most importantly, gameplay-wise, this area is the key to the Eye of the Universe. One more note before we leave the Dark Bramble. While getting footage for this video, I found optional seeds you can enter that don't have a signal coming from them. This was a cool moment of discovery because I thought I'd discovered something new and cool. When I entered, I found that there were 2 lights. I figured one was real and one fake. One of them was a seed that would take you into a new area and the other would reset you back to this default location. I was wrong. The seed on the right leads you back to the same room, and the seed on the left is an anglerfish. The only escape is to go back the way you came. I have seen one other seed like this, and I think there may be more. I think these serve to prevent players who haven't solved the mystery of the signal scope from going the right way or something. I'm not sure about this, so maybe these are here to add perceived depth to the Dark Bramble.
Let's go to the snack-sized asteroid, the alien, ice-laden interloper. This location is very strange from the get-go. It is in a different oval orbit, has a badass name, and is smaller than all the other locations. The interloper is a capital P point of interest. When you get around to exploring it, you find major cracks in the sun face inside of the interloper, and on the dark side of the interloper, it is all icy, so your movements are less controlled. Your main obstacle here on the dark side are giant ice spires. Despite this area seeming bare and empty, it's not without lore. There's a Nomai ship frozen into one of the icy spires that you can't get inside from here. It does have a recording beside it. The interloper's true treasure is hidden within, but if you ever explored the interloper, you may have found no such entrance to said treasure. The key to getting into the interloper is the sun. When the interloper approaches the sun, the major cracks I mentioned will widen, allowing you entrance into the interloper. When the interloper makes its voyage away from the sun, the ice closes up again, leaving you trapped until next time it's near the sun. This is one of the puzzles that makes sense in hindsight, but I'm not a fan of. Most of the interloper is ice, but not all of it melts or gets smaller at all. It has been orbiting the solar system for a very long time, and it's still here. There are multiple cracks. I can see someone exploring this area and not finding the way in. It would have happened to me if I wasn't lucky with my timing. The ice opening and closing is what I define as a half change, mostly because of how temporary it is. And because it's temporary, it reduces the impact of the change. The interloper is how we'll start the semi-active section. Hey, if you find the puzzle too hard, you can always clip through the interloper, spoiling the second puzzle for yourself, destroying your ship, and ruining the way gravity works, somehow. The mentioned second puzzle is easy. You shoot your scout down a path, and find out which one isn't covered in ghost matter. The pathway is also entirely made of the same slippery ice you found out at the dark side of the interloper, making controls difficult. These puzzles get more complicated, but don't get difficult, and there's always a middle room that takes place in between the puzzles. These are traps that require to use your observation skills and movement skills. If you fall down into the hole that leads to the core of the interloper, you will die, because it's covered in ghost matter. Once you get to the true passage right before the core, you'll find a Nomai's corpse, one that looks like it was crawling out of the pit which leads to the core. And it was! Turns out the core is the source of all the ghost matter in the solar system, and completely wiped out the Nomai in this solar system. But this isn't the story section. I have never successfully escaped from the interloper after entering properly. Mostly because I run out of fuel while exiting the interloper, and then use the rest of my oxygen to stay in the same place, because it's impossible to stand still on the slippery ice. While wasting oxygen as fuel, I would have to wait for the cracks to open, leading to my asphyxiation. Some final notes before we continue. When you are waiting for the interloper to reach the sun, you and your ship can get sucked up by the gravity of another planet. This happened to me on what I believe to be the final orbit. In this one, the interloper goes into the sun, and I wanted to be inside the interloper when it goes inside the sun. Then, I believe Giant Deep sucked me and my ship off the comet. I decided, I won't give up, so I tried to get on the interloper and failed miserably, so I hurtled towards the sun at like 200 kilometers per hour. I got a front row seat of the interloper going into the sun though. Yay! Giant Deep belongs in the semi-static category because the only changes that occur are where the tornadoes are, where the jellyfish are, and whether an island is in orbit or not. The islands always fall back down into the water giant's depths, only to be resurfaced because rocks are commonly known to be extremely buoyant. There are a couple islands on this planet, with one very big one on the North Pole. The North Pole Island serves as a puzzle which teaches you the knowledge you need in order to figure out how to land on the quantum moon, through gameplay and figuring it out yourself. This puzzle caused me quite a bit of trouble my first playthrough because I wasn't thinking about the hint. The hint is something along the lines of observing an image of a quantum object and looking at a quantum object itself are one and the same, which means that your scout can be used to observe quantum objects without your character looking at it. You use this knowledge to answer more puzzles within the tower before you are freed. The outside of the tower looks excellent. The inside, well, it looks like the other Nomai structures. The shrine is surrounded by the biggest tornado on Giant's Deep, preventing you from accessing this North Pole Island. This tornado is also causing the current that flows beneath the Giant's Deep surface. I can't really comment on how fair or unfair the tornado puzzle is, because I was lucky enough to completely ignore that puzzle by landing on the Tower Island my first time going to Giant's Deep. I am curious how common this is. Gabbro is on a little island just chilling and doing nothing, besides playing their oboe. The unique thing about this character is that they too are stuck in a time loop, but instead of doing something they spend their time meditating, contemplating death and time. Most importantly, Gabbro teaches you how to meditate on like your second cycle talking to them, depending on when you start talking to them. When you meditate, you automatically skip to the next loop, which can be a useful tool and save some of your precious gamer time. The island Gabbro's on is okay. There's no reason to go here besides talking to Gabbro. Well, actually, if you hate his campfire, you can explore past him a little bit and find a burnt out campfire. That you can light if you so choose. You can even roast a marshmallow there. I think I'm starting to like this place. Thanks to Gabbro, we have learned about Statue Island, the place these time travel statues are made. There is a gravity thing that prevents your ship from flying away in the event of a surprise tornado, and that is where you are supposed to land, but hey, if you so choose, you could land right beside it. But I won't. From here, you can follow the clear path given to you and super boost from platform to platform, which used to be a Nomai bridge. Once you get to the island, you find a door with some Nomai text proclaiming it the Statue Workshop. Beside that workshop is a semi-buried statue which has its eyes open, meaning this is the statue that is connected to Gabbro's consciousness. If you want to get into the workshop, the door won't work. The witness ball is broken, shattered, laying in the sand. Truly tragic stuff. You could write a novel about this. So you continue on the path built for you and use some magical gravity crystals to walk up the wall into a site of a Nomai ruin. Here, you learn that there is in fact another way inside the statue room. You learn this right over a grate which allows you a view of a room. This is the first of 2 times the game uses Nomai children to teach us how to enter a seemingly inaccessible place. You can shoot your scout through the grate and see inside the room. But since you're not in the room, you can't do what truly matters in life. Read the text. The key to getting inside the island is the water. From the grate, you can see that there is water in the middle of the room. Water you can get to if you swim underneath the island. This room, in fact, tells you how the statues work, and gives you a little bit of philosophical musings about this game's version of time travel. But most importantly, you learn about the masks at Ash Twin's core. Back outside, there's a Nomai teleporter and one ancient text in that teleporter that basically boils down to one Nomai welcoming another to Giant Steep. The island and the statues it housed were the key to the Nomai's plan of finding the Eye of the Universe. However, the plan of finding the Eye requires something to actually find it. This is where the satellite station comes in, which shoots out a giant Nomai probe in a direction that has not yet been explored by the probe. This satellite station was created in Giant Steep on a workshop you can find drifting aimlessly through the water. This area is what gives you access to your first lead into the mystery of how to get past Giant Steep's current, which bars access from the core of the planet. Gameplay-wise, there is nothing really to discover here that's interesting besides the previously mentioned lead pointing you towards Brittle Hollow. Although, standing upside down on the gravity floors is very dizzying. The satellite. This device is broken, with only one major satellite room completely undestroyed. One of the two disabled rooms are still attached to the satellite, but you are unable to get to it from the middle area. Instead, you notice it's exposed to the vacuum of space and enter through the broken window. The other has been completely detached from the main body and fallen to the very core of Giant Steep. Here, you may experience the more controversial than Trump, Nomai airlock. This thing has made me more motion sick than anything ever. It wounded me on a deep level that whenever I see something that looks vaguely similar, I suddenly feel very, very sick. Floating among the other islands, there is a dark bramble-looking island with a frozen jellyfish. This island, unlike others, doesn't have a Nomai ship pad, or any Nomai architecture at all. It's all naturel, baby. This leads me to believe this island wasn't around in the Nomai's time. The puzzles here are similar to the type of puzzles you find inside the Interloper. Use your scout to find the ghost matter, and go the other way. It's less complicated, there's no ice to hinder your precise movement. Once you reach the burnt-out campfire, you find a note from Feldspar saying they know how to reach the core of Giant Steep. And that's all there is to this island. Getting to the core is a convoluted process. First, you have to get past the current caused by the giant tornado on the North Pole. You do this by going to an observatory on Brittle Hollow's South Pole. Here, you learn that there are two different types of tornadoes. Most turn clockwise, but a rare select few tornadoes turn counterclockwise. These tornadoes are like drills. You go inside them, and it pushes you down past the current. Anyways, you thought you made it to the core, but instead there's an electric barrier preventing you from delving deeper. Through the electricity, you can just see something poking out of the core. The way in is to go inside the jellyfish and wait for it to go through the electric barrier. Then, you gotta evacuate. Here, you witness a dark place with no clear bottom and maybe a sea monster. The dark wood spreading everywhere looks sinister, and I was expecting some leviathan to come from the darkness and swallow me whole. Just like the dark bramble. Nothing happened, and my fear dissipated as soon as I saw the weirdly wooden core of Giant Steep. The core is very similar to the dark bramble visually, weirdly enough. In the core, you can find the third part to the Nomai satellite that broke off during the satellite's launch. Here, you learn the location of the eye and how many launches it took to find the eye. Once I discovered this, I was surprised at the lack of fanfare, but why would there be any? You now have the information that the Nomai didn't. You are one step closer to completing their goal. Congrats, we have made it to the big boys. The planets have changed permanently as the cycle goes on. These planets, funnily enough, change in tandem with a partner location. Before I continue, I want to speak out the quality of these planets, when exclusively looking at the changing aspects of these planets. When viewed this way, I believe that only one of the planets is flawless in its execution, with the others falling between various levels of quality. None of these planets are bad, or even mediocre. Still, I believe some things could be improved. All these planets share one common flaw: weighting. With Ember Twin, the almost perfect planet, having almost no weighting. In fact, the concept of Ember Twin is based on the opposite of weighting. Speaking of Ember Twin, I'm going to start with Brittle Hollow and its Whitehole Station counterpart. You may be thinking, what? Why isn't Hollow Lantern Brittle Hollow's partner? Well, there's nothing on that moon, so I really won't talk about it except here briefly. Hollow Lantern spews volcanic debris onto Brittle Hollow, causing some of Brittle Hollow's landmass to fall into the black hole inside of Brittle Hollow. You heard that right, black hole. Everything that goes inside the black hole comes out of a white hole near the edge of the solar system. I guess a Hollow Lantern is a part of this relationship, but nothing is on that planet, so it isn't really worth explaining, as said before. Some important locations of Brittle Hollow fall into the black hole. The old Nomai City, the Quantum Tower, and Launch Pad all fall into the black hole, along with unnamed locations that serve as pathways into real areas, like the bridge leading to the new Nomai City, and the Gravity Stone pathway along the roof of Brittle Hollow's crust. although mostly the empty areas that fill the space between important areas detach from the planet and vanish into the matter-absorbing hole that happens to be quite dark. As the cycle continues, more parts of the planet fall into the black hole, disappearing forever. Except, there is a white hole at the edge of the solar system. All the things that fall inside the black hole exit from the white hole, so any lore that you may have missed you can go find outside the white hole. But not everything outside the white hole is treasure. Most of it is the boring regular brittle hollow crust. At the white hole, it is very dark, so you can't see very well, and a lot of the fallen land is useless, so navigating here is actually quite difficult. So, whenever you want to go back to Brittle Hollow, on foot, you can enter the White Hole Station, which teaches you about teleportation. After activating the White Hole Station and waiting on the warp pad for a bit, you'll find yourself back on Brittle Hollow. Neat! The black hole-white hole relationship isn't all hunky-dory though.
Well, back on Brittle Hollow, there's this location called the Temple of Quantum Knowledge, and it embodies all the flaws in how the system is used. In order to access the Temple of Quantum Knowledge fully, you need to wait until it falls into the black hole. If this is one of the only things you need to do on Brittle Hollow before you no longer need to explore it, this absolutely sucks. You have nothing to do except wait. The fix in 1.3, added to skip time while you're at a campfire, isn't great. It makes time go by faster, but you still have to wait for time to pass, and there is no interactive element, so you sit there looking at a blank screen while a number ticks up. This is a band-aid solution. It works, it's just not good. But I think this is the best they can do with the engine they have, without some of what I assume to be major reworks on how the game works. This is why the Brittle Hollow dynamic duo are only okay. But hey, let's move on to discussing Brittle Hollow's content. The Nomai crash site gives you access to the Nomai city on that planet, except this one is the Nomai's old Brittle Hollow settlement. The way down to the old city is treacherous. The wooden pallets are frail, and most crumble as soon as you step on them, falling straight into the black hole. When you make it all the way down the path, you can either continue forwards into the old settlement or turn left and walk on the gravity crystal pathway. The gravity pathway is just a way for you to walk from one side of the map to another. It isn't interesting except for the great view of the black hole above you. The old settlement is visually distinct from all the other Nomai architecture. It looks to be made of stone and seems to have held up better than the other Nomai architecture made of, I don't know, ceramic? Here you can find a mini eye church and a dark bramble mural, which makes it look like the dark bramble attacked and absorbed the Nomai's vessel ship. This area is unique among Nomai areas. You walk along bridges into other little buildings. This area is distinctly vertical. It reminds me of a jungle city with many wooden bridges connecting to little tree houses on top of a massive tree. Not the best explanation, but I think I made myself clear enough. There may be more to explore here that I haven't seen because of the jungle city style. There are multiple layers of buildings and bridges leading everywhere, and some of the lower floors of this Nomai settlement fall away into the black hole very early on in the cycle. The new main Nomai city is very extensive. There are 3 main areas: the Top Eye Church area, the middle Nomai settlement area, and the bottom school area. The top church area has a bridge leading to it from the pillar where Rybeck is, which is the hub of Brittle Hollow. I'm pretty sure you can get to every major area from there. The church at the top is a place for the Nomai to speculate about the true nature of the eye, but in order to get there you have to fly around and parkour your way there. There is nothing of substance to these churches the Nomai know about as much of the eye as you do. These are just to get your mind thinking and speculating about the true nature of the eye. They are fun to find, but ultimately useless. If you go back the intended way, you can find a message from our pal, Solanum. I made sure to pay attention to when I saw notes with her name. Now, if you walk along the side of the broken bridge, we can go to floor 2 or 1. Floor 4 is permanently blocked off because the bridge broke and blocked the way to the top floor. So, let's continue our way down the bridge. Floor 2, the Freshwater District. Based on the name, I guess this is where the Nomai got their drinking water. There are 3 walls with scroll slots, and 1 already filled in. The 2 missing scrolls are hidden in buildings around this area. If you explore a bit, you can find a pathway that leads you into a building that has a gravity elevator thing in it. If you go up it and exit the cave, you find yourself outside in the North Pole. Here, you'll find the ruins of a Nomai surface settlement. As far as I have explored, there is nothing here besides a cool view. The first floor of the Nomai city appears to be the living quarters and school. The challenge of this area is to traverse the area without running into the lethal ghost matter. Once you reach the top, you'll find a school ground where Nomai children were taught. There's a less obvious scroll in this area found by taking a different path to the top. This scroll has character development for one Nomai. Now, we will decide to go to the launch pad. This place has a few things of interest. There is a main launch pad and launch pad control panel in this area. When you first journey here on any given loop, it will be empty. But if you walk down the spiral path to the horseshoe looking thing, you'll find 2 untranslated text and a Nomai witness ball inside the horseshoe. The translated texts tell you which side of the horseshoe will return the ship from the Quantum Moon, and which side will launch a ship. If you return the ship to the launcher and get inside it, you can launch a ship from inside the ship. Mind-blowing. However, the launch is not powerful enough to make you escape Brittle Hollow's orbit, so you'll be sucked back into Brittle Hollow. If you land on the planet's surface while inside the ship, you will die. Inside the Nomai ship is a Nomai recording telling you that you always land in the South Pole on the Quantum Moon. If you follow the spiral path that circles around the gravity cannon to its top, you'll enter a building that has a gravity lift that takes you up to the 2nd floor. Here, you'll find a lore tablet that guides you towards the other major building on Brittle Hollow, the Temple of Quantum Knowledge. From this upper building, you can go to the surface of Brittle Hollow. The Temple of Quantum Knowledge has already been discussed, about how you fully access it, but I never discussed what's actually inside it. When you finally journey inside the Quantum Tower, you'll find 2 Nomai script walls and a Nomai map of sorts. The map charts where the Quantum Moon is at that moment. The Nomai text describes your goal in the Quantum Moon being reaching the North Pole, because that's the only place you can explore the Quantum Moon's reflection of the eye of the universe. The other Nomai text is world building about how important this trip is for the Nomai. There's only one more place in Brittle Hollow to discuss, the South Pole Observatory. Access to this area is slightly convoluted because the front door is broken, so you need to go in from an underground access point. You probably get to this area underneath the observatory via a gravity lift leading to it. Here, you use gravity crystals to walk alongside of ice spikes, and just regular slippery space ice that isn't slippery. Eventually, you'll make it to a clearing with a giant drop into the black hole beneath you. There are icy areas that are safe. Most have Nomai ruins on them. You have to make your way to a gravity lift on the roof of the South Pole. So, on my first playthrough, I got here the intended way, but on my second, I couldn't find the path forward, so I made my own to this icy area. The way out of this place is a gravity lift. Inside the observatory, you find 2 tornadoes that are also found on Giant Steep, both spinning in different directions. This is where you learn how to get past the current in Giant Steep, if you didn't figure it out before. These tornadoes actually work like the ones in Giant Steep. If you jump in one, it either pushes you up or down. The lore here tells you how the twisters work and just some general story stuff. You can then walk to a door, unlock it, and open the above ground entrance to the observatory for the rest of the loop. The Hourglass Twins are binary planets that are the closest to the sun, and look a lot like a desert. The planets that make up the Hourglass Twins are Ash Twin and Ember Twin. The common change that these planets experience is all about sand. At the beginning of the loop, Ash Twin is entirely covered in sand, and Ember Twin has deep crevices that go to the very core of the world. After a little while, sand will start falling from Ash Twin to Ember Twin in a giant pillar. This pillar travels around the crevices of Ember Twin, filling it up with more and more sand, until said crevices are entirely filled. While Ember Twin is gaining sand, Ash Twin is losing it. As the cycle progresses, more and more buildings will be unveiled, until there is no more sand, and Ash Twin has nothing but rocks. And no my towers. Because Ash Twin has less content, I will start with it.
As I said above, when the cycle first starts, Ash Twin is nothing but sand. But as more sand leaves for Ember Twin, more buildings begin to be unveiled. All the buildings along the equator are on different levels of elevation because of the Nomai Bridge that slowly ascends from the base with multiple buildings along the way to the peak. At the peak, there is a sun building. The secret to these buildings is that all these buildings correspond to a planet. There are some visual characteristics indicative of each planet. You discover these characteristics in the High Energy Lab on Ember Twin. The list of tower to planet in ascending order goes as: the spirally building is Giant Steep. It represents a tornado. The next building looks like a chunk of the Brittle Hollow land, so this is Brittle Hollows. The next building is Timber Hearths. This one has a lot of different circles which I think could represent trees. because inside this building you can, in fact, find trees. The next one is made up of two buildings. They have a bridge between the two main towers. This represents the Hourglass Twins, with the destroyed building being Ash Twins Tower and the pristine one being Ember Twins.
Finally, the building at the peak is the sun's building. It's all spiky like how the sun is commonly drawn. These buildings serve as teleporters to the planets they represent. You have to stand on the purple square and wait for the planets to align. Then, you'll be teleported to the building with the orange wires that's kind of broke down on the representative planet. If you wish to return to Ash Twin, then you have to walk back to the white platform you came from, and then once you step on it, you'll go back to the tower in Ash Twin from which you came. This location is essentially a hub world. You can get to 3 locations exclusively-ish from here. Those locations are the Blackwolf Forge, the Sun Station, and Ash Twin Project. You can for sure finagle your way into the Sun Station. I've done it myself. You might be able to make your way to the Blackwolf Forge and get in without teleportation, if you use your spaceship to fly up to the teleportation gate and somehow fly up to the gravity floor. I'm not really sure. But the Ash Twin Project is completely inaccessible via any other method besides teleportation, and is the most complex to get to. However, if you wish to enter any of these areas, you're going to have to wait for the sand to deplete enough for you to enter the building, and then you have to wait for your chosen destination to align with the teleporter.
Personally, I don't mind waiting for the teleport to occur, but waiting for the towers to be accessible is a pain in the arse, especially with the Sun Station. This is because access to the teleporter is time sensitive. If you enter the building when the sand is completely drained, you'll find that the way to the teleporter is overrun with cacti. Any attempt to get to the end of the path will lead to certain death, unless you're good. What you're supposed to do is go to Ash Twin immediately and wait for the sand to start draining, and find the buddings of the Sun Station, and wait for the lower back door to reveal itself to you. Once you're allowed entrance into the building, you run to the gravity lift at the end of the path. I do not like waiting for this to happen, and I don't like how I couldn't really use the time skip because the pathway is time sensitive. The only thing that redeems this waiting game is the fact that the Sun Station is not available for the entire cycle. After about 5 minutes, the sun grows big enough and completely envelops the station. I think this is pretty neat. You have more than enough time to explore everything here before the station disappears, but the fact that this exists at all is pretty neat. But doesn't completely justify the waiting. Overall, the Sun Station is extremely cool, especially the bridge segment. I always feel super cool when doing it.
That is all for the surface of this planet. Now, to descend to the core. Before I get inside the Ash Twin Project, though, we gotta figure out how. And I couldn't. I waited until all the sand drained, looked everywhere, even inside the buildings again, but couldn't find anything after dying to the supernova and coming back here again to explore a bit more. So, I searched it up. Turns out you need to go to the tower symbolizing the Hourglass Twins, wait for the Ember Twin to appear on the horizon with its giant sand pillar, and stand underneath the bridge that connects the 2 towers' upper floor. You wait until the sand pillar is above you, then you enter the broken tower while boosting down so the sand doesn't suck you up, and go towards the teleport pad. Here, you will go inside Ash Twin. I don't know how you're supposed to figure out that will work. Only one puzzle out of many being bad is pretty good. The thing that makes this less forgivable, however, is the fact that the Ash Twin Project is where you enter the endgame. Once you got inside the Ash Twin Project, I was very excited. This place looks great. When you look up, you see the thing that the 2 towers found along opposite sides of Ash Twin are seemingly powering. The wires leading into a device in the middle of this planet, feeding it repeated blue bursts of energy. Along the outside of this room, there is metal found inside Timber Hearth. This rock serves to reinforce Ash Twin's core. Now, I'm going to reveal an insight that no one else has noticed. The rocks look like stars, and these stars will outlast any in the universe. This is where the magic happens. Except, the first time I got here, I was reading writing along the wall, and then the sun exploded, meaning my 22 minutes were up. The next time I got here, though, I fully explored Ash Twin, deactivated gravity, opened up the core of the Ash Twin Project, and took the warp core. I ended the endless cycle by removing the warp core from the project. However, I didn't get any ending on this attempt because the game crashed on me. The one time I experienced any technical difficulties on my first playthrough. Overall, Ash Twin is not a planet you need to explore for any real hints or lore tidbits. Instead, it primarily serves as a hub world for all the planets in the game, with the huge exception of the Ash Twin Project protected in the core of the world. Everywhere in Ember Twin takes you beneath the surface.
the Nomai crash site, the gravity cannon, the lake bed around where Chert is, and I can even twist the high energy lab into leading underground. The point is, the meat and potatoes of Ember Twin leads you underground, into a very confined space. This meshes with the mechanic of Ember Twin. As time goes on, less of Ember Twin will be accessible, forcing you to seek the surface. If your head is touching the ceiling while the sand level is increasing, you'll get crushed to death, making Ember Twin a teeny tiny little bit claustrophobic. What makes the Rise in Sand mechanic the best is the fact that you don't have to wait for any change to occur in order to access almost any area on this planet. Once you get to it, you can explore it. You don't have to wait for a building to appear out of buried sand. In order to explore the planet once the sand gets a little too high, you can either die, which is very easy, or meditate, which is easier, in order to go back in time. This method still has wasted time to it, but it just feels better to me. When I meditate and reset the loop, I'm actively doing something while I go back to Ember Twin, making the experience feel better for me. Back to the underground. Since every location stems from the same underground passageway, we will start with the intended first entrance to the underground, the Nomai escape pod. You read a message from the Nomai that say the surface is inhospitable to Nomai life, so they must live in the caves, which have a cooler temperature than the surface. When you exit out the back path into the underground, you find that there are multiple ways to go. There are, however, Nomai messages which tell you where every location goes. There are 4 choices in total, but only one of them leads deeper into the cave system, and one leads right back outside, if you wanted to escape so soon. Let's go from the rightmost cave to the leftmost. The rightmost cave is introduced with a message informing you of danger up ahead. The danger turns out to be the fossilized remains of an anglerfish. When you first approach the stalactites and stalagmites that block you from entering the room, all you see is the familiar glow of the anglerfish light. If you shoot your scout into the darkened room, you'll see that the anglerfish is of no harm to you, but you may see some text scrawled along the floor, meaning it is possible to get into that room. What a tease. Legends say that the middle path ends up being just a bunch of rocks. Me, being the inquisitive detective that I am, needed to dig to the bottom of this mystery, and found that the message wasn't a lie. This path is just a dead end. Nothing here. There is a doorway across the ridge between the dead end and the leftmost path. If you follow this path, then you will find yourself in a hidden passageway along the crevice that the sand pillar travels along. Here, you can refuel on oxygen because of the trees. You could also watch the sand pillar go by before you return back to the cave. If you really wanted to, you could exit the cave system now and probably find your way up to the surface, if you're good at jumping and exploration. I don't know.
The far left path that hugs the wall leads deeper into the cave. As you follow, you'll find a pathway blocked by a cactus to your left. This is an emergency exit from the cave in case you cannot progress deeper because the sand is too high. You cannot enter this side path unless the sand is high enough that the cactus is completely covered. You can't enter because the falling sand will push you down into the cactus. When the sand is high enough, you will walk through this pathway and find yourself near the end of the underground pathway you are walking through now. I guess this is so you can get to your ultimate goal, the Sunless City, at essentially any time in the loop. But what happens if you attempt to go into the shortcut early? Specifically, what happens when the cactus touches you? Your suit will be punctured, draining your oxygen quickly. The more your suit is punctured, the longer it takes to repair. You repair by holding X, and puncture percent will go up quickly. Once the percent is at 100, your suit will no longer leak oxygen. If you do enough parkour, you'll find that we go deeper into Ember Twin. If you walk forward, then you will see more sand falling down, and 2 paths going in opposite directions around the sandpit. The path to the right leads absolutely nowhere, and the path to the left leads to a maze-like room with no exit. You have no choice but to die. Unless you walk to the middle of the room, look up, and fly into the Hole of Salvation. When you fly up, you'll be greeted by an empty room with one way forward. As you walk along the path, you'll find a giant pit with more sand falling down, and the remains of a Nomai bridge to the right that broke. This is the room you come out of if you took the previous shortcut. If you wish to move forwards, you have no choice but to fly upwards and forwards following the bridge.
At the top, you'll find only falling sand. If you have translated the text in the area before, only if you have, you'll have enough knowledge to figure out the second hardest puzzle in the game. How to proceed past this point. The answer, of course, is to walk through the sand into a room with another pit. If you walk to the edge of the solid ground, you'll be able to see your destination, and it's covered in cactus. You'll need to make a precision jump and bust out all your moves in order to not land on a hanging cactus. Congrats, you have passed the trial. You can now enter the Sunless City. One more thing before we leave this beginning area forever. You really feel like you're delving deeper into the planet, following this ancient pathway. However, if you mentally map your pathway, you'll find that you're looping back around from where you started. You go down, loop around turning left, then once you're facing where the escape pod penetrated, you ascend, until you're above where you came from. When you've got past the Cactus Gate, you're greeted by a giant Nomai door, which leads you into the Sunless City. Before we explore some place like that, let's explore behind us, where there is a set of stairs. If you make your journey up them, then you'll see another view of the anglerfish skeleton. Above the window into the room, you can find Nomai text, which says there's another entrance into the cave. Turning back to the door into the city, it will open for the first time in 200,000 years. The Nomai City is divided into 5 different areas: the Eye Shrine, the Angular Overlook Observatory, Stepping Stone District, the Trailhead to the High Energy Lab, and the Forest Area. I'll cover the Forest Area first since it's the least interesting. Then, we'll go in order of areas that were listed. The Forest Area has a lot of greenery, hence its name, so you can refuel your oxygen here. The most important thing, however, is that the power lies here. This is where you activate the lights, illuminating the city for your exploration. That's the purpose. It illuminates the city, allowing you to see different areas and differentiate them from each other. The Eye Shrine has you avoiding ghost matter on the first floor of the church. While you jump from safe space to safe space on the nearly destroyed second floor, it evokes a feeling of venturing into a dangerous place filled with traps as you carefully traverse this ruined building. The closest thing I can compare it to vibe-wise is Indiana Jones. Although this area is quite small, I like it. Once you reach the end of the path, you'll find a gravity lift taking you up into the main place of worship. This is like the other Eye Church. The Nomai are speculating about the true nature of the Eye, and they know nothing besides that it's older than the universe itself. You can exit via a hole in the wall. You jump through the hole, you'll find yourself on a path that leads towards the Sunless City's exit, or a shortcut. Here, there is more platforming because the path forward goes through a building that is covered in ghost matter, so you must make a jump over the cactus around the building. At the end, there is a little opening onto the surface of Ember Twin. The Anglerfish Overlook, at first glance, is just a dead end with no way forward. But you can see Nomai writing on a room with no entrance, meaning somehow you can get in there. The way you get in is by jumping into the alcove above the main lit up part of the Anglerfish Overlook. Here, you are given the choice of falling into a number of holes. One leads into the room with the text you saw before. You learn here that the Sun Station can in fact be explored, but flying to it and landing on it is not the correct way to get there. But it's possible. Despite being called the Anglerfish Overlook, this is not the way to the skeleton. There's a little more to explore in this segment of the city. For the Nomai, I believe the Stepping Stone District served as a house for one of the Nomai families. It also seems to be the place the Nomai children would frequent. The Nomai children wrote about how to enter their favorite play place, the skeletal anglerfish. We made it, boys. The hint you're given is to feed the anglerfish a light. That's it. But it's enough. Since there's nothing left to explore in this part of the Stepping Stone District, let's open the big door by one of the entrances to the district. This is where you enter the long-awaited anglerfish room. You can see where your scout is on your screen, and if you walk/jump forwards enough, you will find that it's right above you. Luckily enough, your scout emits a light, so when you look up underneath the scout, you will stare up into the inside of the anglerfish's jaw. In order to get inside the mouth, you can either wait for the sand to rise and then jump in, or you could immediately fly up into the mouth of the anglerfish and explore, taking the environment for a while longer than if you could if you did the most boring thing ever and waited for the sand to rise up so you could jump in. Why would you do this, you ask? Because you like bringing pain to others, probably. Besides how you got here, you made it. Congrats. After crawling out of the jaw, you can translate the text you saw from your brief glimpses into this room. This text tells you that the real anglerfish are blind. If you look up above the anglerfish's head, you'll find a gravity lift. Going in it takes you up to where the Nomai properly documented their findings on the fish. The text just says the same thing the children said. The anglerfish are actually blind. I love how they don't tell you what the anglerfish's weaknesses are. You are just given the clue that they are blind. I've already talked about this in the Dark Bramble section. In the research area above the skeletal remains, there is a door in this room that leads to the surface, onto the pathway to the High Energy Lab. In order to enter the door of this area, you have to get to the Sunless City quickly. Once you enter the door and walk a few feet, you will be blocked from progressing because you have to wait for the sand to rise over the cacti. You should know by this point how much I don't like this. After you cross the cacti, you are forced to go through a maze with a low ceiling while the sand is rising. This area is quite tense, and I like it. It almost makes up for the waiting. At the end of this pathway, you go up a gravity lift and find yourself on a bridge with narrow openings on both sides of the bridge, just narrow enough to look through. In front of you, there is a gravity lift that goes downwards. If you look up it, you can find the telltale crystals signifying ghost matter. You can actually find this cave above you currently. It's filled with tons of ghost matter in it. If you continue along the bridge, you can find another jumping puzzle with a gravity lift at the end. Going in the gravity lift brings you to the high energy lab. Here, you learn that objects that enter a black hole exit a white hole earlier than when they enter. You learn here how the plan to find the eye got started, an origin story. You can also see a visual representation of all the warp towers over on Ember Twin. You can also do the experiment that Nomai did, which is cool. Just don't mess it up, or else you'll break the universe. You can exit the lab via a door on the top floor, but you can't enter from this door because on the outside, the ball is broken. We are now finished with the Sunless City. Now, to explore the 3 locations that have gone mostly unmentioned until now. The Gravity Cannon, the Lake Bed, and the Quantum Rock Temple Place. So, I hereby decide I will do the Gravity Cannon first. The Gravity Cannon is no different from the one in Brittle Hollow. It looks the same, and has the same horseshoe-shaped control panel. One option brings the Nomai ship back from the Interloper, and the other launches it into outer space. Behind the Gravity Cannon is a door that leads to nowhere except Cactus. If you recall the ship and go inside, you can translate a recording that says Nomai found a fissure on the Interloper's sun-facing side. It doesn't say that you have to be there when it's close to the sun for the fissure to actually open up. Unlike the ship on Brittle Hollow, this one definitely escapes orbit. You will die out in outer space because of this ship. There is a quantum stone on this planet. It travels the world going into different caves around the planet. One has a temple-like entrance that leads underground. When you reach the bottom, you'll find Nomai writing that serves as a warning for other researchers. They say a Nomai researcher disappeared while in contact with the rock, but not at this site. They give you the name of the site and where it is. This place happens to be the 3rd location, the Lake Bed. This area is separated into 2 segments, Church Base and the Lake Bed itself. In order to get to the lake bed, you need to arrive at Ember Twin quickly. If you go to the deepest section of the lake bed, you'll find a hole which leads underground. This section is very similar to the path on High Energy Lab, as in it's a maze, but longer. After the end of the first segment, you jump from platform to platform over a flowing river of sand. Then, you go into another maze segment, but this time, you make the maze. When you enter, all the pathways are blocked, either by a cacti or the Slag family of rocks. These are quantum objects, so you need to look away from them in order to make them disappear, and open the pathway. This segment does not go on long enough to be boring, so it's an interesting use of quantum objects. At the end of the path, you find the cave the Nomai researcher disappeared in. Here, you learn a little bit more about the circumstances in which the Nomai researcher disappeared. While the Nomai researcher was touching or standing on the quantum rock, the lights went out. When the lights came back on, the rock and researcher were gone. The way to get to the same cave that Nomai disappeared to is by finding the control panel on the elevated outcrop and pushing the witness ball down. The lights will turn off, so you go and stand on the witness ball. Then, you turn your flashlight off. When you turn your flashlight on again, you'll find yourself in another cave. If you walk off the rock and turn left a little bit, you'll find some Nomai text which tells you how you got here. It tells you the solution to the puzzle. You can also travel to the temple I talked about earlier, which is way easier and takes less time to exit from here than from the Lake Bed cave. Chert Base, overlooking the lake bed, is on one of Ember Twin's poles, meaning Chert has a clear view of the sun, and Ember Twin is one of the closest planets to the sun. Chert is here to study the Hearthian sun. If you reach Chert late into the cycle, they'll be going insane. They know the sun is about to explode, and will respond to all of your questions by saying the sun will explode, just rewording it a little bit. Otherwise, if you visit them at any other time, they'll act as a normal NPC. Ember Twin is a great planet. Exploring the underground cave system is interesting, and racing against the clock, trying to fully discover the underground city as the sand rises, is the best use of evolving planets in the game.
Overall, Outer Wilds is an absolutely engrossing experience. This is because of how you explore in this game. Unlike other open world games, Outer Wilds has no main quest. By this, I mean there's no marker telling you where you should be going and what you should be doing. When I played Skyrim for the first time 2 years ago, I only followed the main quest. I was only interested in following the story, and the story was on the other side of the mountain 30 minutes away. Of course, this isn't necessarily how you're meant to play Skyrim, or maybe even open world games in general. You're meant to loosely follow the marker and explore anything interesting you find along the way. Outer Wilds is this taken to the extreme. There are absolutely no markers. The game actively encourages you to explore widely in Outer Wilds' many pockets, of which those pockets have pockets within themselves. This is Outer Wilds' greatest accomplishment. In the beginning of the game, when you are attempting to get the launch codes from Hornfells, you explore your hometown and learn a little bit about all the planets in the game, thus giving you a reason to go to all the planets, and not influencing you towards any particular place. This made exploration in Outer Wilds feel all the more personal. I was the one choosing where to go, not the minimap. This experience sucked me in more than any other game I can think of. An actual open world experience where I was solving a mystery is the greatest thing I have played. It made me feel like for once I was exploring a truly open world, one with secrets and blocked off areas. Of course, experience varies. For me, this was the first and most likely only time I will experience the pure magic of discovery. The potential every open world game has but never achieves. Which makes it all the worse when my immersion is ruined by bugs and wonky physics.
On the surface, Outer Wilds appears to be a product of pure quality. On my first playthrough, it nearly was. I only had one issue. My game crashed when I tried to enter the Dark Bramble with a powered warp core in my hand. But once I decided to make this video, an update just came out. Version 1.3. This update made the game way more buggy. I think it's only more buggy on consoles because I saw a discussion on forums that talked about a clipping glitch that's only doable on the Xbox. After 1.3, I experienced way more issues. Invisible doors, UI broke when I tried to go inside the white hole, and I clipped through the interloper, going straight to its core, which broke my movement, leading to very awkward controls. Although I did go over this earlier on. What can we take away from all these issues? I hope 1.4 comes out soon and it doesn't break the game even more. Outer Wilds has many small things that can, without a doubt, be classified under the category of neato. Of course, there may be things that I missed, so these are just the details I've discovered and wish to talk about. This section is basically just a list of said things. The Hearthian race is gender neutral. Hearthians are only described as they, them, their. At first, I thought this was going to be similar to Undertale, where the main character is whatever gender you pick for them. But that turned out to be wrong, because the Nomai are described with him and her. So, if the developers are going to pull an Undertale in that way, they would have had the Nomai be asexual too. The Hearthians are named after rocks, or rock-related things. Gabbro, Feldspar, and Chert are all rock or rock-like. I don't know geology, so forgive my lack of knowledge. Ryback was not a rock, but instead a real person. He was a mining entrepreneur. Esker is still rock-related, since an esker is described as being a long, winding ridge of stratified gravel. And gravel is rock, right? Yes it is. Even the non-astronaut Hearthians are rock-themed, like Moraine, which seems to be commonly confused with an esker. What could that mean? I don't know. I don't believe the rock-based theme represents anything besides having a naming theme, although I believe it could correlate to nature by being natural. I searched up meaning of stone, and I saw some characteristics that could be used to describe the Hearthians. But then, I searched up plant meaning and got nothing that could describe the Nomai. Yep, the Nomai follow a similar naming convention, except instead of being named after rocks, they are named after plants. Cassava, whose name you can find at the Hearthian Museum, is a root vegetable. Most notably, Solanum, whose name you might recognize maybe, is a type of flower. Of course, there is an exception. There's a Nomai named Daz, who is named after a human model rigging company, or software. I'm not sure what Daz is. One thing I am sure about, though, is that a plant named Daz exists somewhere. When you're flying through space, you can lock onto planets. The lock-on tells you how far away the thing you're locked onto is, and how fast you're moving towards or away from the planet. But there's a cool little detail that depends entirely on whether you're moving towards or away from a locked-on planet. When you're moving towards a planet, the lock-on will be blue. When you're moving away from a planet, the lock-on will be red. This is neat because these colors represent color shifting. In the real world, if an object is moving towards you, it will have a slight blue tint. If an object away from you, it will have a slight red tint. This is mostly detected from faraway stars and planets. The final three are related to the waking up sequence whenever a new loop starts. When you die, the wake up sound can be different. It's especially noticeable when you die by suffocation. When you wake up, your breath will be desperate, making up for your lost air. If you meditate, when you wake up, your breath will be calm. There may be other versions as well that I haven't heard, besides the default version that I didn't mention in this.
When you begin a loop normally, your character will blink 3 times. When you begin a loop after meditating, your character will not blink, just calmly open their eyes. Sometimes you can see the quantum moon when waking up, but only briefly, since it's gone in the blink of an eye.
When you wake up, you can see the Nomai satellite shooting a probe off to find the eye of the universe. However, a very cool detail I did not notice, but people on the internet did, was that the probe shoots in a different direction every time. Wow. This fact is so crazy, it actually affects the story. Speaking of story, smooth transition, I know. That part's next, or now. The story of Outer Wilds, when you put it all together, is not very confusing. Although, there are parts of it that are unknown and up to interpretation, namely the nature of the Eye and Dark Bramble. I'll start recounting the story from the beginning, the very beginning, who the Nomai are and why they came to the Hearthian solar system in the first place. The Nomai are a goat-like race of aliens with 3 eyes. The third eye appears to be special in some way, but we don't know how. The Nomai organize themselves into nomadic tribes that wander the universe, exploring undiscovered places and, ideally, learning new things they can use to become more advanced. Every 10 years, all the Nomai clans in the universe send an envoy to one place. There, the envoys share their clan's most important art and scientific advancements that occurred within that 10-year window. It is said that these festivals could last a very long time. The festivals exist because the Nomai are separated into who knows how many clans, each exploring the universe in their own clan spaceship called vessels. The Nomai who came and died in our solar system came for a reason. One day, they received a signal that is older than the universe itself, coming from somewhere around the solar system the game takes place in. Curious about what the signal could teach them, they warped to our solar system. But instead of finding themselves with a signal that looked like an eye, they found themselves inside of an evil place called the Dark Bramble. Here, the ship was attacked by the anglerfish native to the Dark Bramble, well, being dragged into the Dark Bramble by the dark gnarled branches that make up the bramble itself. Because of the anglerfish attacks, the vessel was unwell, unable to warp. So, the Nomai, out of options, used their 3 escape pods in an attempt to escape. Only 2 Nomai escape pods got out of the Dark Bramble, and not every Nomai made it into an escape pod. Escape pod number 3 got cut off, going even deeper into the Dark Bramble. The survivors of this escape pod, out of hope, tried to go back to the vessel. The vessel's signal was being quickly smothered by the Dark Bramble, and the Nomai of Escape Pod 3 had no other hope of survival except maybe the vessel from which they tried to escape. However, they encountered a problem. The vessel's signal was coming from 2 locations with no distinction between the 2. The Nomai, with limited oxygen, were forced to pick the closest signal. Unfortunately, this was the wrong seed. The Dark Bramble seed was too small for the Nomai to fit through, so they soon died. In their final message, they recorded their theory that the Dark Bramble manipulates space itself. The other 2 escape pods successfully escaped the Dark Bramble. They both landed on different planets, unaware of how the other escape pods were doing. The 2 planets were Brittle Hollow and Ember Twin. These different groups have similar stories. They both were forced underground. The Brittle Hollow survivors had to seek shelter underground because of the volatile moon that bombards Brittle Hollow with its volcanic debris. It wasn't safe to live on the surface, so instead, the Nomai built a settlement underneath the crust of the planet. The Ember Twin survivors had to live underground because of the extremely hot temperatures of Ember Twin's surface. When the Nomai escape pod crashed into Ember Twin, it breached a cave system which has a cooler temperature than the surface. The Nomai built their sunless city near the end of this cave. They also discovered the anglerfish skeleton and used it to learn how to avoid the anglerfish residing within the Dark Bramble. This area became a popular playground for the Nomai children. Both of the Nomai groups began noticing a wandering moon that was orbiting their planet 1 second, but gone the next. This began the Nomai's obsession with the quantum moon. After a period of recuperation and survival, the 2 Nomai groups finally met up. Still set on their goal of discovering the Eye of the Universe, they set up a device in the Outer Rock's North Pole that successfully detects the location of 3 celestial bodies in the solar system: the Sun, Giant Steep, and Brittle Hollow, with the elusive Eye of the Universe as a potential target. This tracker can only track one planet at a time successfully, and if you select the Eye as your target, you're out of luck. This tracker is a failure in the only way that matters, because it cannot find the Eye. This is because after the Nomai arrived in the solar system, the Eye stopped emitting a signal, thus why the Nomai can't find it. Between now and the creation of the next tracker and Ember Twin, the Nomai decided to understand the Quantum Moon, leading to the creation of the Quantum Tower and Quantum Trials. The Nomai researched quantum objects while trying to create the Eye Locator, and became more advanced. Learning from their previous failures, the newer Eye Locator knows where all planets are all at the same time, even the Quantum Moon. This led to the discovery that sometimes Quantum Moon isn't anywhere in our solar system, and during this time, the locator goes crazy and cannot find the moon. So I lied earlier. The Nomai then concluded that the Quantum Moon may go to the Eye of the Universe at this time. The Nomai, being an adventurous race, wanted to land on the Quantum Moon. After learning the rules in which quantum objects operate, the Nomai finally landed on the Quantum Moon. Good for them. These rules go as follow. Observing a quantum object and observing a picture of a quantum object are one and the same. If a conscious being is in complete darkness and in contact with a quantum object, they too will become quantum. And the simplest rule, looking at a quantum object forces it to pick a potential location and materialize. Looking away makes a quantum object become immaterial again. The Nomai used this knowledge to land on and traverse the Quantum Moon. They wouldn't travel to other reflections without aid, so they built a giant tower, which would allow Nomai to travel to the multiple different reflections of the Quantum Moon. Eventually, a Nomai reached the sixth location, the moon's reflection of the Eye. The Quantum Moon then became a very sacred place to the Nomai. After all, this was the closest they could get to their ultimate goal, and gave them a visual representation of what the Eye is like. At the same time, warp tech was being made and implanted around the solar system. This technology uses the power of black holes and the white hole counterpart for instantaneous transportation. Well, not exactly. The Nomai noticed that when a Nomai arrived at Brittle Hollow from the white hole station, they arrived a fraction of a second sooner than when they left. Despite these readings, some remained skeptical. It could have been faulty readings. So, the Nomai decided to test this hypothesis out in the High Energy Lab on Ember Twin. After reproducing the same results which occurred before with the warp travel, a Nomai scientist still thought it was a mechanical error, so they ramped up the power used by stealing it from the Sunless City. This ended in the Nomai being able to physically see the same object going into the black hole and coming out of the white hole at the same time, proving that black holes send you out via white holes into the past. The Nomai now had a visual representation of the Eye, and confirmed that time travel into the past is possible. This got the Nomai thinking about a new way to find the Eye, since the old method was producing no results. This new method involved time travel. The plan was to shoot a probe out into space, gathering information. The probe is sending back to Ashtwin. After 22 minutes, the information stored at Ashtwin will be sent back to the beginning of the time loop 22 minutes prior. Go to the statue in the satellite, and shoot the probe in a slightly different direction. This would go on as long as necessary until the Eye was located. The only problem was finding a source of power large enough to send something 22 minutes into the past. After a lot of calculations, the Nomai found their source. A supernova produces enough energy to send the information back 22 minutes. Fortunately, our sun is big enough to go supernova. Unfortunately, that means the sun has to go supernova. This threw a wrench in the Nomai's plan because the sun was nowhere near the end of its lifespan. They would have to initiate the supernova themselves. They would also have to protect the devices responsible for gathering data and sending it back in time. In order to send the information back in time, the Nomai need a very powerful warp core. Unfortunately, the knowledge needed to craft a warp core was contained within the vessel, along with an actual warp core. After a lot of discussion, the Nomai decided not to venture back into the Dark Bramble, and instead rely on the creator of the warp core's apprentice to rediscover the technology. In order to create the warp core, the Nomai crafted the Black Hole Forge. Alongside the Black Hole Forge, the Nomai began to create the many other things required to make their plan work. A giant steep, the Nomai began to create the satellite and the statues. They created the different parts of the satellite at the satellite station, and then launched them up into orbit via the many tornadoes dotted around Giant Steep. After the pieces were all up there, the Nomai would put the satellites together in space. Then, an accident occurred when the Nomai, using the tornadoes to send a piece up into space, actually sent it down to the very core of the planet. After a few models and speculation, the Nomai discovered that there are actually two different types of tornadoes, the most common kind being the ones that spin clockwise. These are the tornadoes that send stuff into orbit. Then, there's the rare counterclockwise spinning tornadoes that send things past the current. The Nomai responsible for the satellite went to the very core of Giant's Deep, got their piece back, and then sent the piece where it belonged. Space. On an island, a different group of Nomai were working on statues that connected to someone, gathering that someone's memories, and then sending it to a mask that would later be located in the protected location only known as the Ashton Project. These inventions were designed as a precaution against the sun exploding. When the sun exploded and sent the probe back in time, a connected Nomai's memories would also be sent back to their body 22 minutes prior. This system would ensure that nothing would go permanently wrong. Before the statues were complete, the Nomai began mining ore in Timber Hearth. This was so that they could make the Ash Twin core completely insulated from the incredible heat of a supernova. During their mining, the Nomai discovered Proto-Hearthians, and they made sure that they did not take all the ore in Timber Hearth, so if the Proto-Hearthians ever evolved to be capable of advanced metallurgy, the Hearthians would still be able to create. The Nomai used this ore to create a safe space for all the time travel technology to be placed. This is where the warp core and the masks would end up being placed. The Nomai also mined ore from Ash Twin itself in order to create the towers that be on its surface. There are the warp towers and the really big ones on both sides of Ash Twin's poles. The big boy towers are responsible for gathering the energy from the supernova and lead direction to the warp core at Ash Twin's heart. The satellite is orbiting Giant's Deep. The Nomai have safely stored their time travel machine inside the core of Ash Twin. The only thing they need to do is power the device and cause the sun to explode. The sun station was a very controversial project. Many Nomai did not like the prospect of creating a thing that could destroy the sun and its solar system. Despite this, the sun station was created. After its creation, the Nomai were eager to find the eye. However, after finally firing the sun station, it did not work. The sun did not explode, and the Nomai manning the probe were told not to fire. The entire project failed. Around this exact time, a new object entered the solar system, an interloper. 3 Nomai originating from Ember Twin landed on the dark side of this interloper. 2 of them exited the ship they used to get there and walked towards a fissure they saw on the sun-facing side of the object. The Nomai journeyed inside the object, getting an energy reading from inside it. They remained in contact with the Nomai outside, except their signals kept getting weaker as they journeyed towards the core of this strange object. Once there, the 2 Nomai saw a spherical stone casing and noted that this strange energy signature was coming from within the casing. They discovered that the thing inside the casing was some sort of lethal exotic matter. It was very volatile, and pressure was increasing quickly as the interloper came closer and closer to the solar system. One of the Nomai tried to escape the interloper in an attempt to warn the rest of their tribe. She did not succeed. As soon as she exited the area the core was within, it exploded, blanketing the entire solar system in ghost matter, killing all the Nomai that lived within it. The only reason the Hearthians lived is because ghost matter evaporates extremely quickly in water. 200,000 years later, the Hearthians are just beginning their space exploration ventures. They have sent 4 fully trained astronauts before you, each trying to discover what happened to the mysterious race that were alive before all Hearthians, and learn more about the universe they live in. Enter you, nameless Hearthian astronaut about to go into space for the first time. When leaving the observatory/museum on your home planet, a newly discovered Nomai sculpture moves towards you, opens its eyes, and absorbs your memories. From this point onwards, you are stuck in a time loop with no foreseeable escape. You journey across the solar system discovering more about the Nomai and what happened to them, until you come across the warp core inside Ash Twin. If you remove it, you end the time loop. And if you die, that's it. You're done for good. But that's not the true ending to this game. You're supposed to succeed where the Nomai failed. You're supposed to find the eye. When you finally grab the warp core, the game's music changes. It's a triumphant remix of the song that plays before the sun explodes. It's an excellent moment. With warp core in hand, you are supposed to go to the vessel, hidden deep within the dark bramble. Insert the warp core, and input the coordinates to the eye inside the vessel. But, before we warp to the eye, I want to comment that when you enter the dark bramble with the warp core, the music changes. It's mostly the same as the typical spooky dark bramble theme, except the hopeful song remains. It's muted, but the song remains there. We warp to the eye. The eye is the biggest location, in universe as far as we're aware, inside the game. It's this alien world with a giant purple cloud in the middle of it. When standing outside the vortex, you can see the quantum moon floating around the eye, and all the stars in the universe exploding. If you shoot your probe, it will disappear forever. When you walk inside the cloud, quantum objects will warp into and out of existence in an explosive bolt of lightning. You walk forwards more, and will eventually find yourself in an area where the vortex stretches out with no clear end looming above you. You jump into the infinite vortex. And find yourself in an area that looks like there would be multiple of you falling alongside you. Dramatic music swells as you approach the bottom of this weird realm. Suddenly, you find yourself in a familiar environment, the museum on Timberhearth. You can explore this area and read the signs, which are mostly different from the ones in the actual museum. This museum will be filled in depending on what your character has discovered. Here, you learn the universe is dying or already dead. The writing on the signs is written using the words our or we to describe what is in the museum. This is the I speaking through you, through your memories, because the I's only form and thoughts are the ones we give it. It only knows what we know. It has only experienced what we have. Once you reach the top of the observatory, you can observe what looks like a galaxy. The screen zooms out, and you can see the eye in its entirety. Around it, the universe shatters like glass.
The camera continues to zoom out. You see more stars exploding. The camera continues to zoom out. You're looking at a galaxy. It too burns out. You regain control. If you fly down to where the lights are, you find yourself in a forest littered with galaxies. They too begin to fade. Once all the galaxies burn out, the forest is barren. The trees you saw as familiar are now petrified in shells of quantum rock. But perhaps they were always that way, just fooling you by taking a familiar shape and color. You continue to explore in the darkness. Unidentified signal appears. You pull out your signal scope and follow the signal. It's you. You. You alone still exist. The screen fades to black. In front of you, there is a dead tree. Then a campfire. You light it.
The forest reappears around you. Esker appears in his rocking chair around the campfire and says to you, "Do you hear music?" Now you go around this quantum realm collecting fellow astronauts' musical instruments. You go through a puzzle that encapsulated them as a person, or as a conscious being. If you discover Selenium on the quantum moon, her instrument is here as well. Once all the spacefarers have been collected and are seated around the fire, each of them adds their instrument to the song. Until all of them are playing together. Your character's perception of what each person here is and represents assists in the formation of the new universe above the campfire. You can stay here, in this place between time and existence, as long as you want, but the only real choice you have to make is how long it takes to step inside the new universe and create it. Here, you witness the creation of a new universe, a new Big Bang. The Big Bang consumes you, and the game ends. After the credits, you see what this new universe looks like 14.3 billion years later. If you found Solanum, then life will appear in this universe. Outer Wilds starts out as an extremely happy and comfy game. This is because of the music and the theme of going on an interplanetary camping trip. However, as you continue and explore more of the solar system and piece together the Nomai story in an attempt to learn how to prevent the sun from exploding, you learn about the truth. Your sun is dying, and there is nothing you can do to prevent it. This adds sadness to the deceivingly comfy and friendly game that you thought you were playing when you picked up your controller. It recontextualizes the music, making it no longer happy, but instead somber. The universe is ending. However, in that sadness, I found joy. The joy of what I experienced. Like the game, the universe has ended. Even though it's gone, what remains with me are the memories I have experienced in this solar system. I didn't get anything material out of playing this game. I may have left this game behind, but my first playthrough of the game was so magical, it stuck with me. The universe died. It was replaced by a new one, made by the main character's experience of it. The old universe remains in the new universe's DNA through you. The story that takes place in this game doesn't matter. Your search for answers, the places you rediscovered, every detail of the Nomai's history, none of it matters. It's all gone. The end has come. In another way, it's all that matters. Even though universe is dead, you remain, as the blueprint for this new universe. Just like how the game ended with seemingly no chance for a sequel, you, the player, remain. What matters is how the game impacted you. Outer Wilds asks you to question what you experienced, or more accurately, it asks you to reflect on your journey. Maybe you'll focus more on the exploration and what it means to experience something. Maybe you'll focus on what the end means to you. Or maybe you'll just enjoy the game and the universe it puts you in. I sincerely hope you enjoyed exploring the solar system of Outer Wilds as much as I did.